2024 will be a major shakeup year when it comes to gaming, specifically when it comes to Nintendo. Certainly, Xbox, aka Microsoft, and Sony, aka PlayStation, have had a lot of things going up in the past few years, but this seems to be Nintendo's year for getting things right, specifically when it comes to all of the rumors regarding the next Nintendo Switch console. However, while I do want to talk about plenty of those rumors that we have been seeing as of late, one of the things that has gone a little bit under the radar a little bit is the fact that a lot of Nintendo Switch physical games that are first party printed, this is the reason why it's worth talking about, are seemingly out of nowhere going out of print. And this is becoming a little bit of an issue, not necessarily for just collectors, but it does tell you what Nintendo's plans are for 2024. So today I wanted to take the second to kind of like provide my take on exactly what is going on and what this ultimately means for you and your gaming collection if you try to get your hands on some of first party Nintendo games for the Nintendo Switch that are seemingly out of nowhere going out of print. First and foremost, I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for several articles that are kind of touching upon this and are giving their own takes up on this. Different articles, link in the description below to check it out. But ultimately, the link that I'm going to be putting up on the screen right now, you should be able to see it right now, showcasing that Paper Mario the Origami King, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, this is of course that chibi looking version back in 2019 when it released, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, Metroid Dread, Kirby Star Allies, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which already went out of print once already, then Nintendo reprinted it again, and I believe even third-party like storefronts printed copies of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 as well. So this game has been out of print multiple times at this point. New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, Fire Emblem Three Houses, and interestingly enough, Fire Emblem Engage is also part of this list. Yoshi's Crafted World, one of the very first original Switch games. WarioWare Get It Together, I'm gonna guess that's the second game because I believe there's 3 Wario games on the Switch. That might be the second one, but it's certainly not the newest one. Nintendo Switch Sports, Super Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Maker 2, and Mario Strikers Battle League, which is a somewhat relatively still new game that I believe came out a little bit over a year ago. Essentially, every single one of these first-party Nintendo Switch, Nintendo-made and printed games are seemingly going out of print for physical copies. Now, of course, you can still get the game digitally. It'll be available in the eShop. I'm sure there'll be cards available in like Best Buy or Walmart or whatever. So that's not an issue. That's not really the problem here. It's that physical versions of these games are essentially going out of print. Now, the logical thing here is most likely, well, these games are a little bit over a year old. Some of them are 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years old, especially when it comes to games like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Fire Emblem's Three Houses and Yoshi's Crafted World, Super Mario Odyssey. These are very first early legacy, if you want to consider it that way. These are legacy Switch games at this point. These games have been around for quite a while. They're not necessarily all that, surprising that they're going out of print. But then newer things like Metroid Dread, for example, which just released, a little bit over a year and a half ago by now. Fire Emblem Engage, which is not even a year old, I don't think. Mario Strikers Battle League, which is maybe slightly over a year old. Super Mario Maker 2, which is a slightly over a year old. All of these games should not necessarily be going out of print, but the issue is that they are. We are finding out that many storefronts, both digitally and physically, just do not have it available anymore. Places like Target, GameStop, Amazon, Walmart are just simply unavailable or removed outright from the system, which means even if Nintendo made more, they'll just have to re-add it to the system, which they're not going to do. So it just basically means these games will never reappear on a physical shelf ever again because, well, they're basically out of print. Nintendo's not making more. Now, it is worth saying that places like VGP, I believe is what it's called, there's a couple of other places as well, they do make video game reprints. That is still a thing. Again, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has already been reprinted by certain of these storefronts. But the issue here is, I think, a bigger picture. Some people are suggesting that Nintendo Selects are going to be making their way into the Nintendo Switch front. Essentially, Nintendo will take maybe some, if not all of these games. They'll make a $30, $20, $25 version of it with a brand new label or game cover up on top saying Nintendo Selects, and they'll make these games available for $20, $25, $30. I believe that's a very highly optimistic take for them to be able to have, especially when we know that the Nintendo Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. If it's backwards compatible, that means these games are essentially both Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2 playable. And if we are expecting Nintendo to release patches for some of their first-party games, upscaling them to, let's say, 1080p, 1440p, 4K proper rendering, that some of these games do not natively do right now. Like, for example, Yoshi's Crafted World. Yes, it's a beautiful looking game, but that runs at 720p. People may not necessarily remember that, but that is an early launch Switch game that came out at basically 720p capped. If you want to run that at DLSS, whatever, and upscale that to 1080p, 1440, or maybe even 4K on the new Switch, you're gonna have to release a patch for that. That costs development work, that costs money. Whether Nintendo's willing to do what Microsoft did, for example, and go back to the retro catalog and upgrade games for free, or do they decide to take the slate that PlayStation or Sony have been doing as of late with, for example, like The Last of Us 2, costing you, I believe it's $60 to $70 if you buy the physical game for PlayStation 5 or digitally, but if you buy the upgrade from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, then it only costs you $10. So essentially, Nintendo can choose to do, hey, we're going to provide upgrades for visual and enhancements and all that for these games, but they're going to cost you 10 to 15 to 20 bucks, or you could just rebuy the game entirely for a Switch 2. That's the thing that kind of holds me back from like signing up 100% to the idea that Nintendo will be providing free updates for these games and make them available for the Switch 2, on top of being compounded by the fact that they just resold them for 20 to 25 to 30 to maybe even $40 as a Nintendo Select, and make them available as a cheaper, basically a cheaper game in the last years of the Nintendo Switch. I don't see Nintendo doing that. I don't think Nintendo Selects are going to be coming back. But what this does say to me, that these games going out of print, does mean that the wind down of the Nintendo Switch is imminent. There are multiple, and I mean multiple reports regarding the Switch 2, rumors and leaks, but a lot of them are kind of BS and made up nonsense that I wouldn't even waste a second on to talk about. But some of those rumors are actually really like solid, and they actually make a lot of sense. And I think some of those things are certainly something that I want to talk about and hit up in the future, compounded with the fact that Nintendo is winding down game production, not console production, but game production for the Nintendo Switch, specifically when it comes to first parties, which is a big kind of like a canary in the coal mine type of situation. Because there's already been plenty of third-party publishers having small print runs for games that ultimately do very, very well for the Nintendo Switch and those third-party publishers. I believe in Japan, they just recently released Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince, and that game, in typical fashion, Square Enix printed out like 16 copies or whatever, made them available physically, and next thing you know, they sell out, and they go weeks and weeks and weeks until they basically restock that game. So the people who are looking for it, they end up having to buy it digitally. And Square Enix is now free of being concerned that that physical copy will be resold, and they lose out on another actual sell because someone bought a used copy of the game, a physical used copy of the game, which you cannot do with digital copies. So publishers have been running into this issue for quite a while, but Nintendo hasn't. Nintendo has been printing out their own games. They have been making them readily available. There was all that whole brouhaha regarding the Super Mario 3D collection or whatever it was called with Galaxy, and Black Galaxy 2 wasn't there and all of that, and the 64 games. But then they said that they didn't make them like readily available and they were going to go out of print after a year or so. And the game is still readily available everywhere. You can buy $60, $50 or whatever, and it's not a problem. Well, now that's gonna really become a problem because these games are really realistically going out of print. This isn't just some rumor from some fake leaker, but it's actually like a tangible thing. So, games like that Mario and Donkey Kong puzzle game that's coming out, or that Peach game that is supposed to be, like, those games are not going to have massive print runs. They're not going to print out 5 million copies of either one of those games because most likely they will not sell that. So those maybe print out 2 million copies. Instead, in a normal year, they would have printed out 3 to 4. So those games will sit on the shelves for a little bit and be available, but maybe now Nintendo's not willing to do that many prints because they're just going to sell as many as they can for the first 6 months or so, know that they're going to make their money, and then 6 months later they reveal a brand new console and no one's going to care about those games anymore. So That's kind of like the point that is starting to getting a little bit of concerning to me, especially as we angle into 2024 with real, true expectations regarding Nintendo revealing and releasing their latest console, and actual, tangible, true making sense rumors are starting to swerve, not from the Jeff Grubbs of the world, thankfully, that are actually tangible. They make some sense, and they tell us that yes, indeed, Switch old cartridges are definitely going away. And it's something that collectors are not going to be too happy with. They're not going to be, too happy to hear. But it seems like these things are kind of happen sooner, faster than later. And it's up to players to kind of adjust and realize that, well, if you kind of want to get your hands on some of these games, they're going to be going away sooner rather than later. So you might want to buy them if you actually want them. eBay, PlayAsia, VGP, whatever. Just get your hands on them if you want them, because they're not coming back. And that's a real sore eye for Nintendo for sure going forward. If you're brand new to my channel, though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications whenever it's go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.